Welcome to my channel, Bookish English. Everyone says, read books to learn English, but no one tells you how. Which book should you pick first? How do you read if you understand nothing? How can reading help you speak English fluently? I had all these questions too, but I found a way that worked for me, a way that helped me grow from zero to confident. And now, I'll share that secret with you. This is not just a method, it's my personal story. Tell me in the comments, what was the first English book you ever tried to read? I remember that day like it happened yesterday. I was sitting in class, and the teacher was speaking in English. She wrote some words on the board. She read them out loud. Everyone else was repeating after her, saying the words, nodding their heads. But I just sat there, silent. My mouth didn't move. My heart was beating fast. I looked at the words, but they meant nothing to me. They were just sounds, just shapes on the board. I felt small. I felt like I didn't belong. I was afraid she would call my name. I was afraid everyone would look at me and laugh when I said something wrong. After class, I went home feeling heavy. I turned on the TV, hoping to forget. There was a cartoon in English. The characters were laughing, shouting, talking fast. I watched them closely. Their faces were full of life, but I couldn't understand a single word they were saying. They were in a world I couldn't enter. I felt left out. I felt like English was a door, and I didn't have the key. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about school, about the cartoon, about how I always stayed quiet. I asked myself, why can't I learn English? Is it because I'm not smart? Is it because I started too late? I felt sad. I felt broken. But then, I looked over at my small bookshelf. There was an old book sitting there. It was dusty. I had never opened it. It had a picture of a little boy with a red hat and a dog. I picked it up. I sat on my bed and opened the first page. It said, "This is Tom." There was a picture of the boy. I read it slowly. "This is Tom." Then I read it again and again. The sentence was short, but it made me feel something. I was reading English. I didn't need to ask anyone. I didn't need a translation. I just looked at the picture and read the line. I turned the page. Tom has a dog. I looked at the dog. I smiled. I understood. I wasn't fast. I wasn't perfect. But I was reading. I felt something inside me say, "You can do this." That night, I made a promise. I told myself, I will learn English. I don't know how. I don't know how long it will take. But I will not stop. I put the book on my pillow and slept next to it. The next day, I read it again. And the next day, too. That one line, "This is Tom," became my first real connection to English. It was the start of something new. I didn't tell anyone. It was my secret. But that small book gave me something I had never felt before. Hope. Not big hope. Just a small light in a dark room. And that light was enough to take my first step. The next morning, I woke up early. I didn't check my phone. I didn't think about school. I went straight to that book. I opened it and read the first line again. "This is Tom." I smiled. It felt good to read it. It felt like I was meeting a friend again. I turned the page and read, Tom has a dog. I looked at the picture of the dog. It was small, with big eyes. I didn't just read the sentence, I saw it, I felt it. The picture helped me understand the words. I didn't have to translate anything. I didn't need a dictionary. The picture told the story, and the words explained it. I started to love this way of learning. I read the next line. Tom goes to the park. There was a picture of trees, a bench, and Tom holding a red balloon. I read it slowly, then again, then one more time. I read it out loud, and my voice was soft at first, but each time I read, it grew a little stronger. I was reading not to finish fast, but to understand every part. I followed Tom through the story. He played with his dog, he lost his balloon, he found it again. The book had only a few pages, but I read it like it was the most important book in the world, because for me, it was. Each line had a picture, each picture had a feeling, and each feeling helped me remember the words. I started to speak to the pictures. When Tom smiled, I smiled. When his balloon flew away, I said, "Oh no," out loud. I was not just reading, I was living the story. I was inside the world of English. I felt like I could talk to Tom. I could tell him, "Don't worry, your balloon will come back." I was no longer scared of the words. They were becoming part of me. I read the whole book twice that day, then again before bed. I didn't feel bored. I felt calm. I felt proud. I had found a way to learn that made me happy. I didn't know big grammar rules. I didn't know difficult words, but I knew something more powerful. I knew that pictures and short sentences could teach me. They could guide me. And they did. That night, I held the book close to my chest before I slept. I whispered the lines. Tom has a dog. Tom goes to the park. Tom finds his balloon. Simple lines. Simple words. But they meant everything to me. They were the first steps of a new life. The next day, I didn't look for a new book. I didn't feel the need to try something different. I still had Tom and his balloon. I picked up the same book and read it again. I already knew what would happen. I already knew every picture. I knew every word. But still, I wanted to read it. I started with the first page and said the line out loud. This time, I didn't need to look closely. My eyes remembered the sentence. My mouth said it smoothly. This is Tom. Then the next one. Tom has a dog. And then, Tom goes to the park. I didn't stop. I read all the pages, and this time, I didn't feel scared or slow. I read like I was telling someone a story. I used my voice. I changed my tone. I read the happy parts with a smile. I read the sad parts with a soft voice. I was not just reading, I was performing. I felt something powerful inside me. I was learning, but it didn't feel like study. It felt like a game. I didn't care that I already knew the story. I cared that every time I read it, my English became better. My words became clearer. My confidence grew. And the more I repeated it, the stronger I felt. Some people think repeating the same book is boring. But for me, it was magic. Every time I read, I noticed something new. I said a word more smoothly. I understood a sentence more deeply. My brain was learning in the background. My tongue was getting used to English sounds, and my heart was slowly letting go of fear. One day, I read the whole book without looking at the pages. I was walking in my room, and I started saying the lines from memory. Tom has a dog. Tom goes to the park. I didn't even know I had memorized it. My mouth just said the words. That was a big moment for me. I laughed to myself. I felt proud. I felt free. I didn't need help. I didn't need notes. I didn't need a teacher. I had read the same story so many times that it had become part of me. Some of my friends asked, "Aren't you bored with that book?" I said, "No. This book is teaching me to speak." They didn't understand, but I didn't mind. I knew what I was doing. I was building a foundation. I didn't need to jump to hard books yet. I needed to grow slowly, one sentence at a time. And every time I read that same story, I felt like I was planting seeds of confidence in my mind. I believed something very simple but very true. If I can speak one book, I can speak more. And that thought gave me the power to keep going. After reading that book so many times, I started to notice something new in my life. My fear was smaller, my words came faster, my voice was not so shy anymore, and all this change came from reading just a few lines each day. That's when I had a new idea. I thought, what if I read a little every day? Just 5 minutes. Not an hour, not a big lesson, just 5 minutes with a book. It didn't feel like much, but I decided to try. I picked a quiet time each morning, sometimes right after I woke up, sometimes before going to sleep. I took the same book in my hands and started reading. I didn't rush. I read with care. Even on busy days, I didn't skip my 5 minutes. Even when I felt tired, I still read one page. That small habit gave me something big. It gave me control. I was no longer waiting for school or for someone to teach me. I was teaching myself. My 5 minutes became my power. One day, I realized I could read 2 pages in 5 minutes, then 3. Slowly, the time grew without force. Some days I read for 10 minutes, some days for 15, but I never forced it. I let the habit grow naturally, like watering a plant. The words became easier, the sentences made more sense. I started to say them out loud. I liked how they sounded. I liked how my voice felt. Reading every day helped me in ways I didn't expect. I began to see the same words in other places, on TV, in songs, in school. Because I read them again and again, they felt familiar. My brain didn't freeze anymore when I saw them. It smiled. It said, "I know this word." That feeling made me happy. It gave me courage. Some days I didn't feel strong. Some days I felt lazy. But I still picked up my book. Even when I was tired, I read one line. That one line reminded me of my goal. I didn't need to be perfect. I just needed to show up. And showing up changed everything. It wasn't magic. It was habit. A simple habit of 5 minutes a day. But that habit made me believe in myself. It made me trust that small actions done daily bring big results. And because of that small promise I made to myself to read just 5 minutes a day, I was becoming the kind of person I never thought I could be. A person who reads in English. A person who speaks with more confidence. A person who doesn't give up. After a few weeks of reading every day, something new happened. I began to hear sentences in my head even when I was not reading. I could remember lines from the book while walking outside or waiting in line, and sometimes I whispered them quietly just to feel the words in my mouth again. But I wanted more. I wanted to keep these words with me. I didn't want to forget them. So one day, I picked up a small notebook and wrote down the sentence I had just read. Tom goes to the park. I looked at it on paper and read it again. I wrote it slowly, carefully. Then I wrote another sentence. He takes his red balloon. I added a small drawing beside it. It looked like a silly picture, but it helped me remember. That notebook became my best learning tool. Every time I read something I liked, I wrote it down. Just one sentence a day. Sometimes I copied a line from the book. Sometimes I changed it a little to make my own sentence. Tom goes to the park became I go to the shop. Tom has a red balloon became I have a blue pen. These small changes made me feel creative. They made me feel like I could use English, not just read it. Writing the words helped me say them better. It helped me see the spelling, the shape of the word, the rhythm of the sentence. My hand was learning with my mind. And slowly, something amazing happened. I started speaking from my notebook. I looked at the lines I wrote and said them out loud. I didn't worry if they were short or simple. I spoke them with feeling. I used my own voice. Sometimes I read my sentences to myself in the mirror. Sometimes I read them while walking alone. That little notebook gave me something school never gave me. It gave me freedom. I could write anything I wanted. I could practice at my own speed. No pressure, no fear. Just my thoughts in English. And the more I wrote, the more I spoke. I wrote about my day. I wrote about the weather. I wrote what I ate. Simple things. But they helped me find the words I needed in real life. When I met someone, I could say, "It's sunny today," because I had written it before. I could say, "I like apples," because I had written that too. Writing helped me speak, and speaking helped me remember. I didn't need big grammar books. I didn't need long lessons. I just needed my notebook, my 5 minutes, and the will to try. That was enough. That was powerful. And from that small book of paper, my English voice began to grow louder. After writing in my notebook and speaking those sentences out loud, I started feeling more confident. But I still didn't have someone to practice English with every day. I didn't have a partner. I didn't have a class outside school. So I thought, why not talk to the book? It may sound strange, but it worked. I opened the book I had read many times, and this time I didn't just read the lines, I talked to them. When the sentence said, "Tom has a red balloon," I said, "Oh, I like red too." When it said, "Tom goes to the park," I replied, "Is the park near your house, Tom?" I started to ask questions to the characters, even though they didn't answer. I made the reading active, not quiet. I imagined Tom talking back to me. I imagined the dog wagging its tail when I said hello. It felt funny at first, but slowly, it felt good. It felt real. I was using English to communicate, even if it was with a page. I started doing this every day. I would open my book and read a sentence, then answer it, or ask a question, or describe what I saw. Tom is running. I would say, is he running fast or slow? These small conversations made me feel like I was using real English. I was not just copying anymore. I was thinking. I was reacting. I was expressing myself. That's when I noticed a big change. My English didn't feel like a subject in school anymore. It felt like part of my life. I was using it to feel, to ask, to talk, even if the only one listening was me. My voice got stronger. My sentences got longer. I stopped whispering. I started speaking clearly. I didn't care if someone walked past my room and heard me. I was practicing. I was learning. I was proud. Sometimes I laughed at myself. Sometimes I made silly sentences. But I didn't stop. I made the book my practice partner. And the book never got tired. It never judged me. It waited patiently. It listened to everything I said, and the more I talked to the page, the more I trusted myself. I could feel the language entering my heart, not just my head. I was not afraid of speaking anymore. I didn't need someone to correct me every time. I just needed to keep going, one sentence at a time. And that's what I did, talking to the page, turning fear into fun, and making my English come alive, word by word, day by day. As I kept talking to the page, something new started to happen. The words were no longer just sounds or sentences. They began to feel like emotions. I didn't just read stories. I felt them. I read one short story about a boy who lost his pet. When I reached the part where he cried, I felt a small pain in my heart. I knew that feeling. I remembered when I lost something important, too. I read another story about a girl who gave her last piece of bread to a stranger. That touched me deeply. I paused. I closed the book and thought for a moment. I had never felt English like this before. These were simple stories. The grammar was easy. The words were short. But the feelings were strong. I started to understand something very important. When you feel English, you remember English. Emotion is the key. I remembered the word alone, not because I repeated it many times, but because I read it in a sad moment. I remembered the word hope because the character used it when he had nothing left. These feelings made the words stay in my heart, not just in my brain. That's why I started choosing stories that made me feel something, not just long or famous books, but simple ones with meaning. Stories about kindness, friendship, fear, dreams, love. I looked for books with real emotions, because every time I felt something, I learned something. One day, I read a short love story. I didn't understand every word, but I felt the message. A boy loved a girl, but he didn't know how to tell her. He wrote a letter in simple English. I read the letter out loud, and suddenly my eyes were full of tears. It was not just a story. It was a mirror. I thought of times when I couldn't say what I really felt. That's when I realized English is not just for talking, it's for connecting, it's for sharing what's inside your heart. When I understood that, my reading changed. I didn't rush. I didn't care how many pages I finished. I cared about what I felt on each page. I let the story move me. I paused when I was touched. I repeated lines that felt important. Sometimes I even wrote them in my notebook, not because I had to, but because I wanted to keep them with me. They felt like friends. These stories taught me vocabulary, grammar, and pronunciation, but more than that, they taught me how to feel in English. And when you feel a language, you never forget it. That's how I knew I was growing, not just as a learner, but as a person. And I wanted more stories like that. Stories that speak not just to your mind, but to your soul. After I started feeling the stories, I wanted more. But I didn't want any random book. I didn't want books with difficult words or long chapters that made me tired. I wanted stories that touched my heart and helped me learn English at the same time. So I began to search for the right kind of books. Books that were simple, but full of meaning. Books that spoke clearly, not quickly. Books that used short sentences, not complicated ones. I remember finding one story about a little bird who couldn't fly. The sentences were very short. The bird is small. The bird is afraid. The bird tries again. Just 3 or 4 words in each sentence, but I understood everything. And more than that, I felt the struggle. I felt the courage. I cried when the bird finally flew. I will never forget that story. That's when I realized a good English book is not the one with big words. It's the one that helps you feel and grow. I made a list of my favorite books, the ones that helped me the most when I was just starting. The first was a book with pictures and simple actions, like eat, sleep, run, jump. The second was a dialogue book, where 2 characters talk in very easy English. I loved those conversations. I would read both parts out loud, pretending to be both people. It was fun. It felt like I was speaking in real life. Then I found a collection of short stories written for English learners. Each story had a theme: friendship, kindness, fear, hope. The stories were short, but each one gave me 5 or 6 new words. Not just words, but useful words. Words I could use in real life. I also liked books that repeated the same phrases. Repetition helped me remember. I didn't have to study hard. I just read, and the words stayed with me. One of my favorite books had the sentence, "She is brave," again and again. I remember it so clearly because I felt it every time. Now, when I hear that phrase, I don't just understand it. I remember the girl in the story. And I remember how brave I felt reading it. I also found some beginner biographies, short books about real people, about teachers, doctors, athletes, singers. Their stories inspired me. They had difficult lives, but they kept going. They used simple English to tell big stories. That made me believe in myself. I thought, if they can do it, maybe I can too. I want you to remember this. Don't choose the biggest book. Choose the book that speaks to you, even if it's short, even if it's made for children. If it helps you learn, if it helps you feel, then it's the right book for you. Don't listen to people who laugh at simple books. Those books build your foundation, and a strong foundation is everything. These favorite books of mine are more than just stories. They are part of my journey. They helped me learn slowly, with love, not pressure. And if you are starting now, I hope you find books like these. Books that make you feel brave, just like they made me. After reading so many beautiful stories and finding the books that felt right for me, I finally understood what worked and what didn't. I had tried many things in the beginning: long grammar lessons, hard vocabulary lists, watching movies without subtitles, but I always came back to books. Books gave me time. They gave me space. They gave me peace. And more than anything, they gave me progress. So I decided to build a reading plan for myself. A plan that was small but strong. It was simple, but it worked. Every day I followed 6 easy steps. The first step was to choose a book that matched my level. Not too hard, not too easy. I picked books with pictures or short stories made for learners. This made me feel safe. The second step was to read only 1 page slowly. I didn't rush. I didn't try to finish the whole book in a day, just 1 page. I read it aloud, with feeling. I let the words sit in my mouth. I felt the rhythm. The third step was to repeat the page. I read the same lines 2 or 3 times. I didn't feel bored because each time I saw something new, a word I missed, a sound I could say better. Repeating helped me remember without pressure. The fourth step was to write down 1 or 2 sentences in my notebook, either from the book or something I made on my own using the same words. Writing helped me think. It helped me create. The 5th step was to speak from the page. I would close the book and try to say 1 or 2 lines from memory. I didn't worry about mistakes. I just tried. I used my voice. I made the words mine. And the last step, the most important, was to feel the story. I didn't treat reading like homework. I read like I was meeting a new friend. I smiled with the happy lines. I felt quiet during the sad ones. Feeling the story made it stay in my heart. This was my reading plan. A simple plan. But it changed my life. I didn't spend hours studying. I didn't need to be perfect. I just needed to follow these small steps every day. And little by little, I changed. My reading became easier. My speaking became more natural. My thinking started to happen in English. I didn't even notice when the change began. But one day, I was reading a story and I realized I wasn't translating. I was just understanding. And that moment made me stop and smile. My plan had worked. And if it worked for me, I believe it can work for anyone. You don't need a big method. You need a small habit, a quiet voice, a little courage, and a book that makes you feel something. That's all. That's enough. When I look back now, I see how far I've come. I started with fear. I started with silence. I couldn't say a single English sentence. I was afraid to speak. I couldn't understand cartoons or songs or stories. I felt lost. I felt outside the world of English. But one day, I picked up a small book with a picture. And that one small step changed everything. I didn't have a big plan at the beginning. I didn't even know if it would work. But I stayed with that book. I read it again and again. I repeated the lines. I wrote them down. I spoke them out loud. I talked to the page like it was my friend. I chose stories that made me feel something. I built a small reading habit. I followed a simple plan. And most important, I didn't stop. Even when it was hard. Even when I felt slow. Even when others moved faster than me. I didn't stop. And now I can read. I can speak. I can even tell my story in English. And I tell it not to show how smart I am. I tell it to show you something. If I can do it, so can you. Maybe today you feel scared. Maybe you think English is too hard. Maybe you tried before and gave up. But I want to tell you, your story is not over. It can begin today. You don't need to be perfect. You don't need to know everything. You just need to choose one small book, read one small page, speak one small sentence, write one small line, feel one small emotion, and repeat. That's how your story will grow. That's how your voice will come to life. You don't need a classroom. You don't need expensive courses. You need courage. You need honesty. You need to start small and stay with it. And if you stay, the results will come. One day you will look back and say, "Now I speak well. I can talk with friends. I can read books. I can write sentences. It was not easy, but I did it." And that day will come sooner than you think. Just start. Start with a book. Start with a smile. Start with your own heart. Because your English story is waiting to be written, and only you can write it. If this video touched your heart, please like, comment, and subscribe to the channel. Comment below. What book will you start reading today? I'll be reading your comments, and I'd love to see your first English sentence there. You can do this. Your story starts now.